Wow.
There we go.
Recording in progress. God, I'm glad it's not as hot as it was yesterday.
I know.
I mean, I'm finding like heat is the worst thing. It's like it's the thing that I despise more than anything. I think I'm just not a hot person. I'm also not a very movie person. Like not a movie, like in terms of like I'm quite static. So the job is largely sitting here, you know, moving my hands, and my brain's doing a lot of work, but the rest of me doesn't get much of a look in. And so hot weather, it's like almost as soon as I move an arm, I'm going like, oh God, this is awful. So I haven't got air conditioning or anything yet, but I have got a fan.
The Vornado. All right, cool. That's good.
Vornado.
Yeah, well, if anything comes out of this interview, if I've got a new fan out of it, then I'll be happy.
Yeah, Vic Reeves just bought one on my recommendation, so I don't know if that counts for anything.
I'm gonna begin my first question. Really, is about asking. If you could just tell me a little bit about this kind of the event that you're involved with at the Royal Albert Hall. What can audiences expect from this thing that they're putting on at the moment?
Well, it's unlike anything that I've ever really done before, because it's a proper concert. So it is music that is written for an event in the same way that, you know, and please don't think I'm comparing myself, but, you know, like when they asked Handel to write the firework music, you know, it's for a very specific thing. And I was sort of thinking at the beginning, I was thinking like, I'm not sure why they've asked me, because I'm not like a concert composer. You know, I tend to write based on what I see. And when I see something, I hear music. And I know in the past when people have asked me why I've never written any sort of concert music, and I said, well, I don't really know what it would be about. You know, it's like if I sit down and I write, I tend to write songs or something, you know, or like riffs or ideas. But to write an entire piece, I'm thinking like, I don't know, I wouldn't, I've never done it. And I think there's a reason why I haven't done it. It's because maybe there's just nothing I've really wanted to engage with on that level. So they asked me to do it. And for a week or so, I was thinking, I don't quite know why they've asked, because, you know, I'm not Harrison Birtwistle, you know, it's I don't have that, you know, sort of level of complexity thought wise in terms of, you know, writing, or certainly, I mean, I'm not saying that I couldn't, but it's not where I naturally head. And I figure like, well, I do film music for a reason, you know, because I love it and I think I'm all right at it, and I like looking at things, because when I see things, I think of music. But it's its 150th birthday, and I love the Albert Hall. It's like my favorite venue in the world, and I've done quite a lot of things there. I've done some concerts there. I've done charity things there. I've played with Shirley Bassey there. And I've always loved it. So the fact that they asked me at all was extraordinary for me. You know, a huge honor. But then you have to think about, well, what is it am I going to do? You know, it's 150 years old. So I thought, well, I don't want to write a 75 or an 80-minute piece of music. I think that'd be quite a lot for an audience to take in, you know, like you're hearing something for the first time. And also I don't think in that sort of length, you know, I tend to think in film music length, you know, so it tends to be thematic. And so what I did, I went into the archives and I looked up all the significant things that have happened in the hall in the 150 years that's been there, from the conception of the place to the design to the reveal of its opening, to the first ever things that happened there. You know, there's all sorts of sport things that have happened there. It had the world's first indoor marathon. It had the world's first sumo wrestling competition outside of Japan, where they had to reinforce the floor. They had table tennis. They've had basketball. They've had regular tennis, ice skating. And all the music things and the proms and science. Stephen Hawking and Albert Einstein both sold out the Albert Hall. You know, there's been the most amazing things. The suffragettes had all their communal meetings at the Albert Hall in their early days. The Chelsea Arts Club had their extravagant balls where the whole place was incredibly decadent and everyone was in full fancy dress costume. And you know, in the 1920s to 40s, you know, amazing things have happened there. And so I made a massive list of all the things that have happened, and we kind of reduced it down to well, there's all this stuff we can put under sport, all this stuff we can put under science, all this stuff we could put under pop music, the proms, suffragettes, war and remembrance, the future. So I've got 10 chapters, and I've written about a 7-minute piece for each chapter. And that's basically the thrust of the evening. It's a celebration of 150 years at the Albert Hall and all the things that have happened within it. As part of that writing, I had to spend a lot of time in the community, not as lip service, actually proper engaging and involving people, anything from like school kids through to sort of middle school, senior school, sixth formers, sheltered housing groups, Chelsea pensioners, talking to them about their experiences of the hall, whether it's what I know about it, what I feel about it, what I think it might mean for me, what it does mean for me, what it has meant for me, and what it might mean to people in the future. And my idea is hopefully to represent everyone's ideas, everyone's feelings about the place in the music. So when they hear it, I'm hoping that they will hear the conversations that we've had. And some of them are actively engaged in it. You know, some of the kids are performing. There are music students who are involved in the sort of pop music section. So they are part of the performance as much as part of the inspiration of the performance.
Yeah, do you think that this last year has kind of served as a bit of a reminder to just how much we value live performance and being amongst a crowd? And in that time, over the last year, have you feared for the kind of future of performance art and the venues that host events like the Royal Albert Hall?
Well, I think from what I've gathered from people that have been to events recently, and this is like musicians who have gone back and they've played something somewhere, was that they just said that you sort of forget how special it is to be involved in that sound making process and to be engaging with other people on a level other than caution or dialogue. You know, there is a very real emotional connection that happens with music. And I think what it sort of clarified for me, certainly over the last few weeks, is that it feels to a certain extent we're in a kind of stasis, in a kind of odd holding pattern emotionally, where we daren't let ourselves feel too much because potentially, you know, that could be dangerous. So the whole roadmap debacle, you know, the promises that, you know, never came to pass, you know, the sort of carrot dangling. You know, I know people need encouragement and help, but I think they probably prefer honesty and, you know, real truth than anything else. And for me, a lot of my friends are musicians, and they all fell in the cracks of the furlough or the assistance thing. So they've had zero financial help. They're in the business where they want to get back to work and they're being told that they can't. It's going to be the last line of employment that opens up. And I got friends of mine who have been in West End shows who are, you know, now driving for, you know, for Tesco's. My mum, her last Tesco's delivery, the driver was an airline pilot. You know, so we're wasting a lot of talent. There's nothing, you know, I think everyone who does anything in our society is extremely valuable. And that's anyone who like picks rubbish up off the street or cleans things or just makes it okay for everyone else to do what they do. Hugely important. And I don't think there's you know, I don't have any problem with anyone doing anything. And I think driving is great. I've done driving, I've worked on the vans, I've worked on building sites, I've done all sorts of things. But when you've got extremely talented people in one area forced into another because of what's happening, it just seems like a waste. And so I do worry about them. And a lot of them are probably not going to get back. I don't know if they are going to get back. And now you see about like the future of maybe some venues. You know, there's rumors that, you know, there are some theatres and venues that are going to be sold off for, you know, for development, for housing. And I don't know how much of that will be actually lived in or whether there's sort of weird investment things for offshore interests. You know, I don't know. That's all very distressing. But the weird thing about music is that it does ignite every part of your brain. And I think when people get together in a room and it happens and everyone's affected by it in the same way, it's a two-way street. You know, I think the performers are elevated. I think the audience is elevated. It's a shared experience. And it is a big worry. You know, I think the Albert Hall didn't qualify for any help either, from having been kind of suggested as being like one of the jewels in the crown of British culture, to, by the way, you're not getting any money. You know, you just wonder what you have to do, apart from vote for someone else or someone who, you know, might have a bit of some idea about how to do their job properly.
Yeah, one person who does know how to do his job properly as well as yourself is John Williams, of course, who is involved.
Oh yes,
in these series of events. I'm assuming, obviously, you're a great admirer of his, as so many are. Do you know him well, if at all? And what would you say is your favourite score from another composer?
You know what? It's odd with John, because I've never met him. He's one of the. I think I might have met just about every other film composer, living one, over the years. John, I never have. I mean, obviously, my personal favorite was always John Barry, and I don't know what that was about John's work that gets to the heart of me. You know, I always felt like with John Barry that he was writing something that I already knew about, and somehow it felt like he was writing it for me. And I know that there are millions of people in a room who would be listening to that music and having the same feeling, you know, but that's a very, really specific skill. He had a way of getting right to the center of something emotionally very easily. And John Williams, I think it's probably fair to say that he is the last of the greats, you know, and I don't think that's an insult to any of our contemporary great composers. But in terms of like classic golden masters, you know, we've lost so many, and you know, I keep waking up in the morning checking the papers. There's two people I want to see are all right. It's John Williams and Stevie Wonder. If they're okay, then I reckon the day will be all right. But you know, he absolutely is a treasure, and every composer, I think, looks up to him. And yeah, I mean, he's the master. It's just an extraordinary lifetime of writing, and an extraordinary catalogue of music that has affected generation after generation. And you know, I taught my daughter how to ride a bike a couple of months ago by running behind her playing the flying music from E.T. On a phone, loud. And do you know what? The difference it made. I mean, I know this is partly a function of how music works with your brain, but when you hear that, and you're almost like you become a part of the film, you know, and off she went, pedals went, and that was it. And it was like it was like it was from the film. It was like a really poetic, profound moment, you know, to have it soundtracked by something like this. But I mean, you don't have to go very far in John Williams' career to find classic music, you know, and the fact that he's still so revered, and probably one of the last people who could hand a film score over to someone and not have to worry about getting notes, you know. I would imagine anyone who gets John Williams to do the thing would be so extraordinarily grateful that the last thing they would do is like, "Hello, John, I'm not sure about this opening bit."
Well, you've not met John, but have you ever had the chance? Have you ever met Stevie Wonder?
Yes, I have. Yeah, a few times. Yeah, and what's amazing about him is that he always remembers. And I was talking to him, well, a very long time ago, about when I did that Shaken and Stirred record. I don't know if you remember that. It was something I did in the sort of mid-90s, and it was like all my favorite James Bond songs. And I was getting people that I'd like to do it, and I was in Los Angeles, and I found myself at Stevie Wonder's birthday party. And I was talking to him about this thing, you know, and I said, do you want to do a song on it? And he goes, yeah, I want to do Live and Let Die. And I was I'd like 3 days before I'd recorded it with Chrissie Hynde, and I thought, I can't do that. So that was the end of that. But I can I might be able to do it now. You know, if enough time has gone, maybe I can re-record it. But you know, I just think, like, you know, if you're sitting in a room with Stevie Wonder, I just don't know what I would do. You know, I remember I wrote a song with Lionel Bart um, a few years ago, quite a long time ago now, obviously. And I'm sitting, it's just me and him and a piano, and we're sitting next to each other on the piano stool. And I was thinking, like, this guy wrote Oliver. What can I bring to this? You know, what can I possibly do that this guy hasn't done a million times better already? And you just feel a bit foolish. It's like when I went to when we did the John Barry tribute concert after he died. I organised that with John's widow Laurie, and every single piece you knew, every single one, and you just feel like an amateur. You know, like when you come out of those events, like when you watch a great film, or you watch a great stand-up comedian, or you watch a great sporting event, you know, or a great movie. You know, it's like you just think, like, what am I doing? You know, it's like I either give up or I've really got to try much harder. And so you just keep going and going and going. But I suppose that is, I mean, it is inspiration, but I'm in awe of these people who can perform at that level and can make that connection. And it's such an extraordinary thing to be able to do. So I'm forever grateful for John Williams, absolutely.
So I'd love just the idea of going to Stevie Wonder's birthday party. Does he sing Happy Birthday to himself? I'd like to think.
I think I'm not sure if it was before he'd recorded that. When did he record Happy Birthday? Maybe it was in the 80s. No, he didn't. I don't think it was even on the playlist, because it's like whenever you go to any sort of playlist now and it's like a Happy Birthday one, that's always, of course. You know, I mean, I suppose the thing to do to make money anymore out of music, if that's possible, is you've got to write a good birthday song and a good Christmas song, because at least twice a year for someone, it's going to mean something. No, but he's I remember talking to someone who'd been working with Stevie, and said he works on Stevie time. You know, it's like you get a phone call at 3:30 in the morning going, like, I'm in the studio, can you come down and do this? And I've heard the same thing about Prince as well. You know, it's just, you just phone you up at any time saying, I'm in the studio, bring a guitar, we're going to do something. And but you know, magical people, you know, superpowers they have.
I know. Well, you talk about, obviously, you know, the events you're putting on, and I know John Williams has done a few kind of live recordings of orchestras of his kind of scores and stuff. I mean, there seems to be such an appetite for film scores these days. Do you feel like this has always been there and just has been untapped, or are audiences starting to kind of value the work that composers like yourself do more these days?
Well, it is interesting. I mean, what's been more interesting has been the kind of growth of the live show to picture. You know, where you go to an event and they project the film and the orchestra plays alongside it. I've done a couple. I've done Casino Royale and I've done Independence Day like that. What's really amazing is that the level of musicianship we have in this country is so high that after the first 30 seconds, you forget that you are listening to a live performance. You're just watching the film and the things happening and everything seems more vibrant and more alive. And it takes me back to the times, like, you know, you think like in the sort of 40s, 50s, 60s, where you could go and see a movie in one of the big cinemas that have got, you know, they might seat 2,000 or something. And all of a sudden you're in a venue like the Albert Hall watching Casino Royale with 4,000 people. And you might, you know, even if you saw it in a big cinema when it came out, you're still only talking about a few hundred probably. So that communal thing, it's like a sports event, and everything becomes more elevated, and it's always really exciting. So that's an interesting development. There's much more of that sort of thing going on. But the film music concerts have always had a really strong audience, and I think part of the reason for that is maybe one of the reasons why they asked me to do the Albert Hall thing, is that, you know, film music usually happens in quite short bursts and it has to make its point very quickly. So if you go to a film music concert, you're always probably going to have E.T., Superman, Raiders, The Mission, Good, the Bad and the Ugly, Rocky, you know, like, because and they make their point immediately as soon as they start. This is the great skill of these people, is that they get you to the heart of the matter within 10 seconds. And so you're immediately taken away to you know, and reminded of your experience of the film. And 3 minutes later, 4 minutes later, it's finished. And then there's another one. So it's an incredible sort of series of highs, really, with sort of nostalgia tied into it. You already know the music. And for a lot of people, it's their introduction to orchestral performance. I know there's a lot of kids that have come up to me and said it's the first time I've ever seen an orchestra, or parents have said they now want to listen to some Tchaikovsky, or they want to go and see Mars, you know, or Holst or something like that, because they've heard it. So it's good to break down that idea of an orchestral concert, because, you know, one of the great myths is that it's, you know, there's a snobbishness about it. And, you know, but the people who play in these orchestras are just ordinary people. They just happen to be brilliant musicians. And the music that they play is written for an audience. It's not written, you know, a lot of the time, it's not written for anyone's, you know, it's not an intellectual exercise, although I appreciate that some music is like that. But, you know, all that stuff that happens in film music concerts, you're immediately back in the experience that you've had with a film. And I think it's been like that since films have happened, really, because one of the things that John Barry told me, we said, when you're writing film music, he said, play the theme, play the theme, play the theme. And when you go to a John Barry film music concert, you know every piece, because in the film, he's played the theme, played the theme, played the theme. So you have this odd experience as a film composer, that you have an audience that are going in there open to everything. They're open to the movie as an idea. They're open to the music as being something that they're going to pay attention to and listen to. And they generally do it in silence, and they generally pay attention for 2 hours, you know, and that's quite a rare thing. And so if you're skillful enough in weaving the music through and making it happen at key points, that stuff lands, you know, and it goes in. And you might not even have noticed it, but then you'll hear it a week or two later, and there is something there that stays. And I suppose, you know, it's an easy leap from, you know, from going to see a movie and deciding that you like movies and you like movie music, to going to see it performed live. It is a different thing, but it's also, it's like the gateway drug to Tchaikovsky.
Yeah, I mean, nothing elicits an emotional connection to art than music, more than than music does, in my opinion. I think I love those like big live shows. They just get tingles every time. You kind of sort of takes you back to a scene or a nostalgia, memory and stuff. But
Yeah,
you've got this.
I'll tell you something interesting about music and the brain and why that happens. Because we were studying it with a Professor Sophie Scott, who's like a specialist in how your brain works in reaction to music and comedy. And we did an experiment with me with an MRI machine and music. And what was fascinating about it is that when you play music, every part of your brain is activated. Every part, your physical, the thing that deals with your physicality, to do with your breathing, to do with your body temperature levels, to do with memory, to do with emotion. Everything is stimulated, which is why you get those feelings when you listen to it, and you don't know why. I'm listening to a piece of music and all of a sudden I feel excited, or I want to cry, or, you know, it's like, because every part of your brain is engaged. And we did another part of that experiment was, as a composer, they said, we're going to show you a word, and when you see the word, I want you to write music to it. And when you see the word in red, just think about the word. So there's like a control part of it. So I did this thing. I was 90 minutes in an MRI, and I came out and I said, what's fascinating is that when you are writing music in your head, every part of your body is engaged aside from memory. So when you're creating something new, it's nothing to do with something that's already happened. You're not using your memory to do it, but every other part of your brain is completely lit up with activity. And the big question is why, and that's still a big question, because we don't really know, but we know that it happens. So if you're ever wondering why you feel like you listen to a piece of music and you feel like you can run faster, or you can drive faster, or you can tackle something you haven't tackled before, or you can deal with something emotionally that you've been avoiding, or all of a sudden it opens a floodgate for something that you didn't know you were holding back, it's because every part of your brain is being lit up by music. That's just a cold, hard, undeniable scientific fact.
Yeah, I remember I was on the way to the football once. I put Ecstasy of Gold on, and and it got me in the best mood. And then we won 5. We beat.
Do you know what? You just even saying that has made my hairs. Do you know what I mean? It's like now it's my memory of that piece of me, not even hearing it.
Yeah.
And I'm getting excited by it. I mean, it's just, oh my God. Don't Metallica put that on before they come on stage?
Yeah,
I think it's their walk-on music.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Yeah,
I don't think Ennio Morricone has Enter Sandman for when he comes.
Yeah,
I think it's the least he could do. Yeah.
But I mean, you've had a wonderful career, and you've blended kind of blockbuster movies with smaller, kind of more intimate TV series. But do your methods always stay the same, regardless of what the assignment is? Be it Independence Day, or be it The Inbetweeners, or The Tiger Who Came to Tea. When you get involved in a project, is the way you operate and the way you work, is it kind of the same all the time? Do you have the same systems and methods?
I think largely, yes. I mean, what it comes down to is someone asked me once if they could do a documentary on me scoring a film. And I said it would be very short, be about 10 minutes long. I said the first 5 minutes will be me getting the phone call and meeting whoever it is who's asked me to do it, and us discussing the project. The end will be doing it with the orchestra, handing it over, shaking hands, premiere, good night. The middle, which is where all the meat is going to be largely me with my head in my hands crying. It's a bit like making a film of someone writing a book. Yeah. There's actually not much to see. And I think as much as I like to try and change bits and pieces, I think my core initial thing is just an emotional response. That's it. That's all you've got. It's like, how do you feel about something? And if someone tells me the story or says, I'm doing this, and I immediately see it and hear it, I'm going like, I can do that. If I struggle with like, I'm not sure whether I get why you're doing that. I'm not sure why this film is being made or what it's saying, or, the sum total of why it exists. And that's usually a good sign that maybe it's not the right thing for me to do. But when I do something, it's always, if I see it, I will hear it. And that's true of almost anything. Someone said like, what's the thing that drives you to write? And I always said like deadlines and fear. If you ask me to do something and you need it by next week, I will do it by next week. If you say I need it in 6 months, it will take me 6 months to do it. And I've had instances where I've written something and everyone liked it and it was going in the show, and I got a phone call. I was on the way. I was on a tube once on the show. I got a phone call and it came through in one of the gaps in the tube where you can get reception, and they said like, we sort of changed our minds. We don't really think this is, can you do something different by tomorrow? And in the next 20 minutes, I wrote a thing. I think it's one of the better things I've ever done, and it just happened. And every writer that I've ever heard speak about this says the same thing. No one has any idea about where these things, emanate from. Keith Richards thinks it's just about having your aerials out, and he said something about the key thing to writing is that when the ideas come, it's a good idea to be awake when they do. Certainly try and be awake when ideas come, and also be aware that it's happened. It's like, because a lot of the time I'll be doing something, nothing to do with music, and I find myself either singing something or hearing something, and I'm thinking like, I must have just heard that, and I haven't. And then I kind of rewind and go, I'm just going to replay that in my head and see what that is. And sometimes it is a thing. A lot of the time it's something that Barry Gray did for Thunderbirds. But sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's a thing. I go, oh, well, maybe that's a thing. So I'll rather write it down or sing it into my phone. And then maybe, every couple of weeks I'll go through them and say like, which of these are actually solid ideas? It's all unconscious stuff, like most of your good work is done with I think when you don't really think about it and you let your brain do some heavy lifting for you. But my approach is basically the same. If I see it, I will know pretty soon whether or not I can write it. And then the process is, I'm in a room on my own looking at it. It's asking me a load of questions and I have to find the answers. That's basically what it is.
I was thinking, I was looking over all of your kind of credits today, and it's some, I guess in some ways you've kind of helped for me define what it means to feel British. I know that sounds like a big thing to say, but a lot of what you do, James Bond, Little Britain, In-Betweeners, The Tiger Who Came to Tea, Sherlock, these are things I think that have this feeling of Britain about them, and they give Britain to the outside world, and also make people at home kind of, sometimes there's an intangible feeling of what it feels to be British, and a lot of your music has scored some things that are undeniably British. I mean, you know, we've discussed at the beginning, you know, when it comes to the potential closure of venues, that politically there's not a huge amount necessarily to be positive about, but as a nation, you must be a great champion of the work and talent that Britain has to offer to the world, because you've been behind so much of it.
Well, and the Olympics, you know, that was the biggest thing. Well, I have a sort of odd relationship with identity in terms of, you know, the sort of nationalist idea. I'm a big sort of rejecter of it. You know, I don't like it, and I think you find that a lot of musicians don't like it either. You know, I think a lot of musicians like the idea that we are, you know, connected in so many, without sounding all woolly about it, you know, but we are sort of connected with other people in so many ways. And as musicians, we get to meet a lot of people from around the world, and without being able to share the same language, you can sit down, you can play, you can understand what's going on. If they play a piece of music, you know a lot about them, you know, and so there is a little bit of that, you know, kind of hippy dippy attitude with musicians about, you know, the great sort of cosmic oneness of everyone, but I think there's a lot of truth in it, and so, you know, the idea of carving these spaces up into places that said you're there so you're that sort of person, and you're there so you're that sort of person, is a nonsense to me. So I never really write from a British perspective. I mean, my dad was Irish, my mum is English, so seeing both sides of that dynamic is very interesting, and kind of opens your eyes to a lot of things, but I just, you know, for me, I just really, it's for me, it's just all about people. People are the most fascinating things in the entire world. I will talk forever to anyone. It's like people come and sell things at the door, I'm talking to them for an hour. My dad was the same. You know, my mum used to be rolling her eyes. He'd come, you know, he'd be talking to someone who was selling socialist worker or something at the door, and then they'd be in the front room and having a cup of tea and talking, and, you know, but I think that's the most important thing, talking to people and trying to understand people. And music is just another way of doing that. Music is a way of expressing something internally in the hope that it will land with someone else, and in the landing of it and the receiving of it, they will understand something about you in that exchange, and learn something about themselves as a further part of that, and their response to that makes me understand something about them. That's the great exchange, you know, wordless. And so, I mean, it's odd. Yeah, I mean, the British thing, I know what makes something feel like it, and maybe that's what film composers do. You know, you can create the idea of something. This is what it's like. I mean, someone said that the most American sounding score they've ever heard was Independence Day, written by a British person, because, you know, you use the tropes of what's become known as Americana, but what you're getting to is emotionally, it's the core of what we are as people. And if you think about, in a way, the theme from Little Britain and the big theme from Independence Day is not that different. You know, they're kind of about people with great hopes and dreams and courage. And I mean, it seems a bit weird applying that to Little Britain, but I always thought that for me, the theme from Little Britain was a national anthem for those people. And when I did it, I wanted it to be, I thought about having an orchestra, getting a bad orchestra to get them play it bad. But I thought that's poking fun at them. And I thought, I don't want to do that. What I want to do is have it aspirational, but not quite, they're just not quite good enough to make it good. So I wrote for a big orchestra, but had way too few people play it. So the sense of it is reaching for something that you can't quite get a grasp of. It's just slightly out of reach. The thing that will make everything great, the thing that will make everything all right, but it's not going to stop us trying to get to it. And maybe that's what, I don't know, maybe that's what nationalism is it, that idea that you're searching for the thing which defines you, and maybe if we find it, it will make us great. And some people think that that's already happened, and some people think it's yet to happen. But I think that sort of yearning for identity is a big part of it. I find a lot of musicians don't really have as much of a thirst for that as other people do. And that's not me. I'm not being anti-British by any stretch of the imagination, because I think everything that I've done, I live here, and I always have lived here, and I have been advised by many people to live in other places. Go to America, do this, like accountants going like, if you moved over there, you could do this, but this is home. And the people that I live around and amongst and work with, I really do dearly love everyone, and I feel like me being anywhere else wouldn't count for anything. I feel like when I'm here, I'm doing things that count, which is why for me the Olympics was so important, because I wanted to say that we're here and we can do these wonderful things. It's not all about business. It's not all about employment. It's not, it's like we do amazing things in this country, and I think the Olympics proved that. I think our arts industry proves that. I think our the level of skill with our performers, our technicians, Hollywood comes to make their films here, they record their scores here, we export our music all over the world. I think is it the second largest export that the country has, is its intellectual property, music and entertainment and video games and that sort of thing. So it's a massive part of who we are, I think, and you can't quite put your finger on it. So I'm not really a flag waver, but I'm a people supporter.
Yeah, well, it doesn't surprise me to hear that you've got such a fascination for people, because I guess what makes a good score in many ways is understanding people, isn't it, above anything else? Like to some degree.
Yeah, you're part psychologist in a way. It's like, because you have to understand what the director and the producer are trying to get out of something, but then you have to sort of put yourself in the position of what the actors are doing, because I have to, in a way, you have to kind of draw the emotional aspect that might well be there, but just might need elevating slightly. So, you're as much as a kind of emotional actor as actors are physical and emotional actors. They have the advantage of us seeing them doing things. And the advantage that music has is that we do the same things with music, but you just don't notice it.
Yeah, I could carry on speaking to you for hours, because this is all such fascinating stuff, but unfortunately I've only really got time for one last question.
That's one of my favorite things. It was a songwriting thing once, and Tony Hatch, the great Tony Hatch, who is one of our, I think, bona fide genius writers, was doing a medley of some songs, and the MC, who was Don Black, who is equally brilliant and very funny, it's one of these events where people rib each other quite a lot, and he said, ladies and gentlemen, that was Tony Hatch. I could listen to him all night, and for a minute there I thought I was going to have to. She's like one of my favorite gags.
I like that.
Said with love.
Yeah, my last question was a kind of cheeky two-parter anyway, but I was asking you, just looking back over your own career, is there a particular score of yours that sticks in your mind that's over all the others, that you're most kind of proud of, that you think defines you best as a composer? And secondly, which is the score or that you've ever done for TV or film that people ask you about the most?
Well, on the second part, that question has changed over the years. And I realize how fortunate I've been to be dealing with things that actually engage with people like internationally at such a level. So when it started off, I remember when it started off, and I was doing Stargate and Independence Day, I was the next John Williams. And then we got into the Bond stuff and I was the next John Barry. And then we got into the some other stuff. I don't know what I was the next of. At some point I'll be me. But these things are quite, I mean, I say like a culty thing. So the first real big one was Stargate. Actually had quite a big effect, and the fact that that they made the TV shows out, I think 10 seasons of it, and I think 20 odd episodes per season, so like hundreds of episodes of Stargate. So I got quite a lot of interest in that. When I started with James Bond, that's a different level of you know, the eye of Sauron is upon you the entire time when you do a Bond movie. I have to admit, my experience has been, I'd say 99.9% positive. You know, I know some people don't like stuff that I've done, but that's fine, because I don't like some of it. And also, I don't like everything else I hear in the world either. And I really don't, you know, I really don't mind if people don't like it. They've usually got a good reason, and I'd probably agree with them. But then what's interesting is that they're moving into after the Olympics, when I sort of stopped doing films for a bit, I sort of moved more into TV. And TV is, in terms of access, I think people have, it works in a very different way. There's something about film that is, you're there and we're here. And there's something about TV is that we are actually in your room. You know, it's like when you go to a cinema, you leave your house, travel somewhere, pay to get in, sit in someone else's space, and you share it with a bunch of strangers. When something's happening in your home, it's where the whole of the rest of your life happens. So it feels much more of an intimate medium. And weirdly, when Little Britain came out, I just had hundreds of things from kids, like first one actually like school kids, because they were all saying all the catchphrases and everything. So massive response to that. Sherlock was my introduction to hardcore fandom. You know, when people are so utterly committed to the show and to the life of the show and the characters and the things that they identify with. It was a bit like watching, we did one of the episodes, we premiered one of the episodes at the National Film Theatre, and Benedict and Martin were there, and it was like Beatlemania. People had travelled from all over the world to see it, and, you know, screaming and shouting, and it was really a phenomenon. It became a phenomenon. And then recently with Good Omens, you know, another group of incredibly dedicated fans who engage with you on all sorts of levels, and it's really lovely because they understand every nuance of it. You know, they're so into it. They analyze everything as much as I have, so you can have conversations about, you know, the angle at which the hat sat in that scene and what that meant, you know, because it probably did mean something. So all of these things have provoked similar levels of interest. And it's not just about the one thing. And I think that's incredibly fortunate to have got on board with all these different things. And they are all very different. I mean, Good Omens as a thing is very different to Sherlock, which is very different to James Bond, which is very different to Stargate. You know, these are all sort of odd things. And when you ask, like, what's my favorite one, it's an odd thing with film scores because you're not really writing them for yourself. You know, there is an odd sort of parental pleasing thing that happens, you know, that you try and please the creators of the movie. You want to put some of yourself into it, but it's a bit like finding your place in a family. You know, if you're a child, you know, it's like, well, he does that, mum does that, dad does that, brother does that, sister does that. What do? I do this, you know, and together we are this whole package. So you have to sort of find your way of existing within all these other skills and all these other talents. And the odd thing, I think the reason why I carry on doing it is that I don't think I've got the definitive one. You know, I don't think I like bits of all of them, and I tend to like the thing that I did last the most. You know, so, I mean, at the moment, I'm very into the things that I'm writing for the Albert Hall because it's so different for me to be able to do it and not worry about it fitting to a picture, or, you know, so I'm really into what I'm doing on this at the moment. So I have to say that the thing that I'm writing at the moment is my favorite thing at the moment. But in 5 years' time, I might go back to liking the Tiger Who Came to Tea. You know, or Amazing Grace is always a film that I've loved as a score because it's the first time I sort of did a proper serious drama. You know, like something about, you know, about slavery, abolition of slavery, and it felt like it was significant in its subject matter. There were no, car chases or helicopters or spaceships or CGI, monsters or anything. It was about something very real, and something that still has implications today. So I felt like I had a different kind of responsibility to that. Sorry, these things keep falling out. Every single set of in-ear ones that I've ever had of these, they just fall out. I don't know if I've got wonky ears or something.
I think I've got misshapen ears because I can't.
Yeah.
I have to wear over the head ones. I can't. They just fall out.
Yeah. These fall out all the time, and it's a shame because I like them.
Yeah.
But they're not much good if they're on the floor or in a toilet.
Brilliant. Well, I can't wait to see what you've got lined up at the Royal Albert Hall. I really can't. I'm hoping to get down there and see it. It sounds a fascinating event, and I'm so.
I'll tell you what it isn't though. It's not a bunch of pop stars coming along and joining in and singing songs. It's curated orchestral music with twists and bits and pieces. Don't expect, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Brian Ferry. That won't happen.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys.
Hey You Guys, huh?
Hey You Guys.
Is that from the Goonies?
It is indeed, yeah.
Nice.
Hey